Hey, Sono, ahí va. ¿Cómo va? Hi. Yep. Hey, Luli. Here we go.
Hello.
Hi, Tom. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. Because, well, nothing is more exciting than talking about, serious films, sociology, why not? And you are the creator of one of the most, I would say, controversial shows in the 90s, and still, I mean, and you did it in a time period where, it wasn't easy to do these kind of shows. I mean, now everyone maybe can do something, well, not like that, but it's easier to do something with that level of risk. So, but first, I want to start from the beginning. How did you start as a writer when you were little?
Oh man, I when I was really young, probably 10 or so, my parents took us to see a play, um, Alice in Wonderland, and my brothers and my sister and I, and I, and there was a big bunny running down the aisle, going, I'm late for a very important date." Anyway, I was so excited. I went home and I started writing dialogue, though I didn't know that's what it was. And I'm still writing dialogue, lo, these many decades later. So that's how I started writing. And I was, when I was a kid, I'd write little plays, and in high school, and then when I got to college, I got very serious about it and took writing class. Then I moved to New York to be a playwright, and failed miserably. But it was all good. I was starving, living in the East Village of New York City, starving. But was very lucky that I got a job writing for television.
Hmm. And what was the time? What was the moment in your life when there was like an before and after, like you say, the breaking point of your writing career?
I would say, Michelangelo said when he was 81, "I'm still learning."
Hmm.
So I feel like I'm still learning. I don't know if there was a, a point in which I think it's an evolution of finding my voice and working with others, working with writers and other actors and directors to find my voice. I will say this: Oz was the most liberating experience that I had, because up to that point I'd been working in broadcast television in America, and there were very strict rules, commercials, and they didn't want people. They wanted friendly people and nice people on broadcast TV shows. And here was this new network, HBO,
Hmm.
that was like, "You write anything you want." And I was like, "Whoa, all right, I'm gonna have some fun now." So to be liberated from the restrictions of broadcast television for cable television was an enormous breakthrough for me.
Hmm.
And not just to
Yeah,
let you use swear words and stuff like that. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about
yeah.
is narratively. Chris Albrecht, who was head of HBO at the time, said, "I don't care if the characters are likable as long as they're interesting."
Yeah. Yeah, I remember recently we did a live with an actor, Joshua Beaton, who's an LA actor, and we
Mhm.
talk about HBO. He was in the Pacific and also in The Night Of, that happens, in New York. And he told me about the liberty they have to, the freedom they give to the writers in HBO shows. That is more like, what are you watching an HBO show? It's going to be a high quality, right? I mean, and it's going to be controversial. It's going to be original. I mean, I know, and it's a way. I mean, but in case of Oz, it was I think it was revolutionary because, okay, The Sopranos, for the first time, we had an anti-hero as the protagonist. Okay, yeah, it was controversial. But in case of Oz, all the characters are anti-heroes. I mean, and they are only anti-heroes. They do like terrible things, and even the ones who start being like good, they end up, being not so nice. So, I mean, did you have any resistance to that in the beginning?
No, and this was before Sopranos. We started doing Oz before Sopranos, and all I thought to myself was, I'm going to, when I introduce a character, I'm going to play into the audience's, because people who don't know about prison assume prisoners are bad people. And so I wanted to play into that initially. So an audience member would see this one character and go, oh, he's bad, he's a criminal, But then I would start to make the character likable and actually have the audience care about them. And then once I thought the audience cared about that character, I made them do something even worse than they had done initially, so that the audience would be emotionally confused by these characters, that because in my mind, the problem with certainly the American penal system is that prisoners are faceless, and if they're faceless, they can be forgotten. And I thought, well, I'm going to put faces on them. Not necessarily happy, smiley faces, but I'll put faces on them and let the audience decide what's right and what's wrong.
I think with the criminal system, I mean the prison system, is that people are forced to do terrible things to survive. And in a way, I remember building empathy with some of the characters because, okay, if I'm there, I have no choice. And in a way, that's a very harsh criticism to the prison system. Did you receive any commentary or critics from people that work in the criminal justice system that say, oh, you shouldn't do this, they show this way or something like that?
No, I didn't. Actually, first of all, I did about 2 years of research going to various prisons. When I started getting responses, I get letters from prisoners saying, oh, I'm innocent, you've got to help me get out. But what I would get also were letters from the correctional officers saying how accurately we were depicting the tensions they feel. One of them wrote to me and said, prison life they're all separated into gangs. And he said, and the guards, we're gangs too. We're a gang too, because the only way to survive here is to be a part of a gang. And so I never got really any that I could remember any negative criticism from people who work in the system. I did get a review in TV Guide when the show first came on that said that Oz was an offense against God. And I actually did something I never do. I called the editor of TV Guide and I said, I just want to get this straight. Your TV critic knows the mind of God. Okay? How is it that a TV critic knows the mind of God? Philosophers, priests, rabbis, imams have been trying to figure out the mind of God for centuries, but you have a guy on your staff who knows the mind of God. And the editor apologized to me. He said, I'm so sorry. We should never have let that run. So.
And why did you choose the prison system as a ground to build these stories? Because it's a very particular, ground.
Yeah. Well, number one, I was doing a show on broadcast TV on NBC called Homicide, A Year on the Killing Street. And like a lot of cop shows, at the end of some episodes, we would arrest the bad guy and off they'd go to prison. And,
Yeah.
and you know, all these TV shows, they go off to prison and you never see the bad guy again. And I kept going like, well, what happens to the bad guy? That's the story I want to see. I don't care about these detectives. I want to see what happens to the bad guy. And we actually did an episode of Homicide that was set in a prison where there was a riot, and our cops, our detectives, had to investigate the prison. And we used actors who had been on the show previously, and we had them come back to be prisoners on the show. So I always sort of think of that as the Oz pilot, because I was trying out all this stuff. The other thing that I should say is, back when I was a teenager in upstate New York, where I was born, near Buffalo, I was born in Buffalo. There was a prison called Attica, and there was a very famous riot in Attica when I was a teenager. And not only was the riot itself brutal, but the way the riot was put down by the state government was even more brutal. And I remember at the time being shocked by the whole thing. And I think somehow it just sat in the back of my mind all those years, waiting to come out, you know, waiting to tell the story, because I was still asking myself, why did that happen the way it happened? Yeah.
Well, in a way, when I started studying in the university, I started reading essays about the prison system because of us, because I was so shocked about it. And here in Argentina, for example, the prison system is terribly awful. People get out, worse. And I started researching, and in a way, the whole series is a thesis about the flaws of that system. Do you see it like that, or that was your intention?
I mean, my Terry Kinney, who played Tim McManus, who was he ran Emerald City. I created that character because I wanted there to be someone who believed that the system could be better. And he made all these attempts, but the system overwhelmed all of his attempts to make the system better. And so in a way, Tim McManus became the most tragic figure on the show, because he never gave up trying to make it better, but he never actually succeeded making things better. And and Terry Kinney was brilliant in that part.
Yeah,
he was brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember feeling bad for that character. I mean, Terry Kinney was great, but I remember feeling bad because in the beginning you say, "Oh, come on, you're stupid. What are you doing?" And then when you understand its motivation, you say, I mean, because deep down you knew he's going to fail. That, as you say, it's a tragedy, and that's a strong statement. Because a lot of people really are like the character McManus, and they really believe they can do a change. But the problem is the context, the institutional context, is so rotten that it's merely impossible. I mean,
well, I also think that the great danger with television is that television, because they it's like Prozac television, where people we don't want people to be up late worrying about this problem, so we're going to solve it. Like on broadcast television, they'll be like, somebody will be an alcoholic, and in 42 minutes, they stop being an alcoholic. Well, we all know people who've struggled with alcoholism, and it takes a lifetime to overcome that. And it feels always to me like we diminish the sort of real struggles that people have in their lives by trying to sort of make them feel better. And so with Oz, my thought was, well, I don't know. I'm not here to make people feel better. I'm here to make people ask questions and maybe even come up with an idea how to fix the system. But, you know, it's been a long time since Oz was on the air and the system still doesn't work. So I don't think Oz contributed anything to the evolution of the prison system.
Yeah, but I think it's important to have this kind of fiction reflecting because this kind of problem.
Can you see me?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, let me get him back in here. Maybe.
Oh, very interesting.
I'm sort of breaking up, I think, or something. I don't know. I've become purple.
Oh, yeah.
Sam's going to try to fix it because I'm an idiot.
No, as I was saying, something I found really funny about the show,
There we go.
there, is that, again, you see the same characters playing cops in Law and Order, and then you see it in jail playing awful characters. For example, Christopher Meloni,
Yes.
was Christopher Keller in Oz and Stabler in SVU.
Yeah.
And for me, it was kind of fun because, look, my father used to say, look what happened to Stabler. He had a breakdown and he ended up in prison.
Well,
and
he
in a way,
started in prison and then went on to become a...
Oh, yeah. But it was kind of ironic also, no? I mean, for an actor, that's the best you can do. Play two completely different characters. I mean, and also Dean Winters. Well, my favorite character was, O'Reilly, by Dean Winters, because again, you in a way you admire the guy because he has an instinct to survive. But you know he's like a very bad guy. But the interesting thing is, and I'm sure this was intentional, there was a moment of redemption for each character.
That's right.
O'Reilly, even Adivisi, I mean, who was really a terrible character, had a moment of redemption. So why did you choose to do that?
Well, I think that you know, even the worst people want to be redeemed in some way, shape, or form. And so my thought was, you know, again, you know, most TV redemption happens in an hour, and real redemption, you know, it takes place over the course of a lifetime. So what I wanted to show was that these characters were on a journey, each of them individually on a journey that was unique to themselves. O'Reilly, who could manipulate pretty much everybody, the one thing he could not manipulate was saving his brother's life. And so that inherently changed him. I mean, it didn't make him stop being Iago, but it definitely tempered his darker side, because he felt he carried the guilt of that of his brother's situation with him.
And well, you mentioned Iago, that's a Shakespeare character, and yeah, I can see your influence in Shakespeare Oz in a way. Well, the ending, it's a metaphor. You know, when the theater play, I found that really brilliant because, you know, Shakespeare, in a way, Shakespeare expressed the human tragedy, the grays. Not there is no black and white. You have awful characters doing good things, and, you know, good characters doing terrible things.
Yeah.
So, do you that was conscious? I mean, you really want to use Shakespeare as inspiration, I would say, or structure to build a series?
Well, let me tell you the advice that I was given by my mentor, Bruce Paltrow. If you're going to steal from the best. Don't steal from the worst. So my attitude is, if I can steal from Shakespeare, the Greeks, Chekhov, or the Bible, I'm going to steal from them, as opposed to, I don't know, I don't want to insult anybody, but let's say Tom Clancy. I don't want to steal from Tom Clancy. I want to steal from Shakespeare. And you know, I think you know, when you look at the great works like Shakespeare or Chekhov, and you're not actually stealing. What you're doing is going, how did they tap into humanity in a way that still vibrates in our lives? I don't pretend to be even remotely as talented as anybody of that caliber, but I did try to say to myself, let me put it this way. I never disliked any of the characters on Oz. I always felt for them, even in their worst. And when you say that about Schillinger, who I mean, to me, I thought he was sad. I know he was bad, but to me, the way he acted broke my heart. And so I was always able to write him, you know, and especially in dealing with his children, who obviously hated him.
Yeah.
You know, that to me, that was heartbreaking, because to have a child hate you is a tragedy. It's, you know, it's just tragic.
Yeah, also there's a lot of Greek tragedy in us, because
Well,
the whole stories is a tragedy, I think.
Well, and
in a way.
also in terms of Augustus Hill, you know, he is the Greek chorus.
The Greek chorus, yeah.
Yeah, and that was a very conscious choice on my part to have someone who is going to represent what's going on to the audience, you know. And I'll tell you, Harold Perrineau, who played it.
Wow.
Actor to do.
Yeah, no, and yeah, I remember when I used to revisit Oz when I was in university. We used to watch it with a lot of friends, and a friend of mine say, "Yeah, Augustus Hill is the Taurus, the Greek. It's like the Greek." So yeah, it's true, and it was very interesting, you know, to have this, you know, all these ideas he expressed, you know, because. Each you know, the episode had this theme expressed by him consciously, and then expressed by the story of the characters. There was one episode that I really found incredible, that he is like telling prison stories, and all the prisoners are living like children, right? I know I was shocked by it, because they were like all with this, you know, expression of being children, right?
Yeah.
And I associate that of being orphans, right? Because again, in my moment of weakness, when I felt bad for the characters, I felt they're really orphans. That's the problem.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I never thought of it that way, but that's exactly right. By the way, I have to give credit where credit's due. All of the monologues, the way they were staged and filmed, were done by the individual director of that episode, and so it was totally conceived by them. That the writing obviously was done ahead of time, but they were allowed to then take the writing and shoot it in whatever way they wanted to. And some of the stuff they came up with, the directors, was just astounding, you know, and so much fun. And I literally they would come to me and say, "Oh, I want to tell you what I'm going to do with Augustus Hill," and I'd go, "No, don't tell me. Let me be surprised." And they'd be like terrified, because it'd be like, "Oh my God, now I'm on my own. I have to do this." But I always loved what the directors came up with. It was because you really have to give everybody an opportunity to play. You know, the actors, the directors, the crew, everybody has to have a chance to to participate in the creative process, or the thing becomes sort of narrow and not much fun.
I remember also I was trying to pay attention of the name of the directors. I remember Kathy Bates direct one of the episode, the famous episode where Keller break Beecher's limbs. I think it was that was a wonderful scene. I will wonder, that scene was on the script or was a contribution of Kathy Bates?
No, that was in the script. That was in the script. Kathy and I have known each other since she was an actress on stage in New York, and we were talking one day, and she said, I'd really love to start directing. And the good thing about Oz was you could have people coming who've not done a lot of directing or any directing, and sort of join into the process. Matt Dillon directed for the first time. Chaz Palminteri directed for the first time. Steve Buscemi. So and with Kathy, what was fun about it was that she was this extraordinary power on the set by the nature of her being. But the actors were like, she wouldn't let the actors get away with anything. She would go like, no, I do that trick when I'm acting. You can't do that in my show. I'm directing. So it was great. It was great fun to have her there.
Yeah, I remember also Steve Buscemi. He directed several episodes, I think.
Yeah.
And he also was, drawn by the idea of, showing the prison system. Actually, he directed a movie called Animal Farm. I think it's.
That's right. Yeah.
A prison. How did you meet him, and did you discuss about the things of the script? Because I know he was very interested in the prison system, as a place to tell stories.
Yeah. Well, again, because New York is this little enclave, unlike Hollywood, where everybody's spread out all over the place, you get to meet a lot of the actors and other talented people that you end up working with, just through friends of friends and stuff. So I can't remember the exact moment that I met Steve, but he definitely was really anxious to jump into Oz and explore the world. And he's so gifted, both as an actor and as a director. Yeah.
Yeah. And what about the casting process? Because I mean, back then, most of the actors were unknown. Now A.K. Simmons won the Oscar, but back then he was like regular actor. I remember following his career, and I remember he played so well this tragic character who is really a terrible character. But again, yes, he have the problem with his son hating, and he ended up killing or make her he presents the death of their children So how did you cast him or him on Dean Winters?
It's funny. He I had seen him on stage, but I had seen him in Guys and Dolls singing and dancing, a gangster singing and dancing, and then we were doing Homicide, and we needed a guy who was an Aryan Brotherhood guy, and it was like a two-parter. I think it was a crossover with Law and Order, and anyway, I thought he was spectacular. So when I was coming up with characters for Oz, I said to the casting director, "Well, find out what that guy from Homicide is doing." And evidently, he didn't want to do the show, didn't want to do Oz, because he was afraid now he'd be stereotyped as this Nazi guy. And I have to say, at the time, his children were very small, and if you spend time with J.K. and his wife, he would be like goo goo gaga, you know, baby, la, la, la. You know what I mean? He was such an adorable father that the idea that he was playing this hideous Nazi was always ironic. But anyway, evidently, I don't remember this, but he recently told me this, that he called me to say that he wasn't sure he wanted to do the part. And he said, you know, I don't know if I want to do this over a long period of time. And evidently I said to him, well, you know what, JK, when you want to stop doing it, I'll let you out of your contract and you can go do something else. And of course, he stayed through the entire series. But, and again, as I said, I don't have any memory of that conversation, but if JK said it, it must be true.
What about Terry Kenny, because he's also a very important character. He's, as you said, he's again the I think he represents the audience, the naive audience who is used to this prosaic television.
Well,
so
I would say he does, and Beecher did originally, the character of Tobias Beecher, because Tobias Beecher was basically an HBO subscriber who is now dropped into a prison. So I'd say between the two of them, they were the new eyes and ears coming into the prison. And of course, Terry, again, I'd seen in a lot of plays and thought he was spectacular. Lee, I met, he was a waiter at the Empire Diner, which was around the corner from my house where I lived at the time. And I would go there on Sunday nights and have dinner there. And we just started, you know, insulting each other. And so I thought, oh, well, you know, this kid, I don't know what's going on, but maybe I can come up with a part for him. And so I came up with Beecher.
Wow, yeah, I mean,
it's a waiter story that actually turned out well. So
yeah. And Dean Winters, how did you find him? Because again, it's another key character.
Yeah.
Again.
Well, you know, it's funny. This is going to sound like all I do is travel around New York, going to bars and restaurants, meeting actors. But I was with a friend of mine, a wonderful writer, Noel Ben. We had dinner together, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to go up to see a friend of mine who's bartending not far from here." And I said, "Well, I'll go with you." And I went up, and Dean was bartending with his brother Scott, who played Cyril. And I just remember Dean looking at me. My hair at the time was extremely long, and I was wearing a leather jacket, and I had sunglasses on or whatever. And he just looked at me like I was the biggest idiot on the planet. Like he literally said to Noel, "Why did you bring your cab driver into the bar?" And so again, we started insulting each other. Clearly, the only way to work with me is to insult me. I've just discovered this now on this interview. I've got to really think about this.
No, well, that's very Italian. I don't know if in Argentina we insult each other all the time, and that's cool. I mean, we actually the way of saying dude in here in Argentina is an Argentinian word that means asshole at the same time. But it depends how you use it. It means an insult or not. So that's very Italian.
It is Italian. It is very Italian.
And it's interesting. What about Barry Levinson? Because I know, well, he's known for many, many movies. And to produce, I know he was a producer of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And to produce a show like this, it's also a risk move for someone like him, because he did all these movies, so.
Well, what happened was he had bought the rights to David Simon's book, Homicide, a Year on the Killing Street, to develop it for NBC as a series. And he was looking for a showrunner, and he was meeting people, and he wasn't finding somebody that he was in sync with. And he and I met, and we got along great. And so we started doing Homicide together. And and as we were, you know, over the years doing Homicide, I said to him, well, I have this other idea. And he, you know, what's great about Barry is Barry wants to break all the rules. He doesn't want to do everyday television. And so he was like, that sounds absolutely insane. Let's do it. And I remember when we shot the pilot, we flew out to Los Angeles, Barry and I flew out to Los Angeles to show it to Chris Albrecht. Now, the idea, this had never happened before and will never happen again, but Barry Levinson and I went into Chris Albrecht's office, just the three of us, it was probably a beta, that was that long ago, it might have been a VHS, into the machine, and the three of us watched it together. The thing ended. Chris asked like 2 questions, and he said, all right, let's make the series. Now, normally what happens is that you shoot a pilot, you send it to the network, it goes to marketing, it goes to legal affairs, it goes to business affairs, it goes to the, you know, the president of the network's grandmother. Everybody watches it, everybody has an opinion, and nothing usually happens. The show doesn't get on the air. This was so remarkable that it was just 3 of us in a room, and Chris said, yes, let's do it. And so it also showed not only Barry's willing to take a risk, but Chris Albrecht's willing to take a risk.
Wow. And now he's still producing and directing Levinson, because I haven't heard any.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's actually got a movie that will be coming out. I actually just saw a cut of it 2 days ago, called Harry Haft. It's a brilliant. It's just a brilliant film. It's about a true life story about a boxer who was in a concentration camp, and I don't want to say it's a Holocaust movie, because it's a Holocaust movie, but it's also just a really devastating examination of a life. And I really shouldn't talk too much more about it, but it's
okay. It's okay.
It's a great film, and you know, mostly what we've been doing is doing movies for HBO. We did Wizard of Lies with Bob De Niro, and we did You Don't Know Jack with Pacino.
Yeah, with Al Pacino. Yeah, that's right. No, and and I remember there was an episode where all the characters were singing.
Yes.
It was a memorable episode. How did you come up with the idea? Because
I'll tell you, it was you know, necessity is the mother of invention. Harold Perrineau, who was playing Augustus, was offered a part in Mummy 2, not Mummy 2, Matrix.
Matrix, really.
The second Matrix movie. And my attitude is always, if an actor gets an offer to do a great part in a movie, I'll do everything I can to get them out of my show, as long as they come back. And so we worked it out with the shooting schedule. And they were shooting Matrix, I think, in New Zealand or Australia or somewhere. It wasn't like he was in Trenton and could drive back and forth to the set. When he was gone, he was gone. So we worked it out that he could shoot the monologues for all the other episodes except this one. We just couldn't make the date work. So I looked around and I said to myself, oh, wait, I've got Rita Moreno, B.D. Wong, J.K. Simmons, Ali Turkson, all these people who can sing, right? So rather than just do some bogus new narrator, I'm just going to have them all sing. And we had so much fun shooting it, because they were all like, it was like the high school variety show. You know what I mean? It was like, let me sing. I want to sing. I want to sing. The only one who didn't come to me and say he wanted to sing was Dean Winters. He said, I don't want any part of this.
Well, Rita Moreno, I mean, again, she's an actress, well, who works more like in, very, let's say, family-friendly characters and movies, and now she's playing this, nun, on a prison. What was the story about her? How she arrived to us?
Well, it's funny. There was a TV show she was a regular on in New York. It got canceled, and the producers were having a party at Elaine's, that used to be a very famous writers' hangout, and I was invited to go because I knew one of the producers, and I literally met Rita, and I said, "Oh, Rita, I'm such a huge fan of yours," and she goes, "Well, if you're such a fucking huge fan of mine, why the fuck haven't you written me a part?" And I was like, whoa, So, I said, okay, I'm going to write her a part. And I took her to dinner with her husband, Lenny, who's since passed away. And I was talking about Oz. I was describing the show overall. And she was like, oh my God, that sounds so fascinating. But Tom, you haven't mentioned what my part would be. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry, Rita, I'm really sorry. I said, you would be the nun. Long pause. And she goes, the nun? Me play a nun? And she now does a litany of all the movies that she's done or TV shows where she played hookers, where she played madams, where she played drug addicts, she said, nobody's ever been crazy enough to cast me as a nun. And I said, well, that's why we'll be a beautiful partnership, you and I. And she said yes on the spot. So there we are.
Yeah. Actually, the character also, it's kind of interesting because it's not like Beecher or McManus, who are more characters that are, in this quest or in this voyage. In the case of Rita Moreno, the characters, she's just there. I always thought she's there, and she will be there after the other one's gone.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. She's been there long enough to know. To not be fooled by anybody or anything, and but her heart is a very spiritual heart. You know what I mean? She is very much tied to her belief in God, and I think that's what keeps her sort of like, I'm gonna take care of these people,
And there was some, mirroring with the BD Wong's character, the priest. Also, what was why did you create these two characters specifically in the what were their function in the dynamic of the show? Because also BD Wong's character is, again, you see it as a naive character, but it's a different kind of attitude.
Yeah. Well, for me, I don't know, being a sort of half-assed Catholic, I thought it'd be fun to have two Catholic, one this nun who's a psychologist, and the other is a priest who's really there for guidance counseling in a different level, and to perform priestly functions. But it was great because Beatty was so totally embraced his characters, both his nervousness about being there, but also his need to connect with these men. And yeah, I just thought the two of them I could have spun them off to their own half-hour sitcom.
Hmm. No. Later, after Oz, you did a series called The Borgias. Well,
Yes.
was a a known family. I studied history well before entering in all the in the cinema industry, film industry. I also I was in university. I give classes and I studied the Borgias, Machiavello, and it's kind of interesting because unlike other Borgia series, you did a very I felt you did a very precise research of the Borgia family, and
Yeah.
also the depiction of Machiavello is very accurate because in other series they depicted as an evil guy, and I know his story because I studied that, and he was just a normal guy who
Yeah.
was trying to you know you know so tell me about the
Well,
Borgia because I feel a parallel between us and the Borgia in a way.
yeah. Well, they're also. I have to say though, I'll know I'll get in trouble for this, but they are my two favorite shows that I've ever done. Um,
Hmm.
uh, uh, but with Borgia, what I found compelling is that the period where they lived was so impossible. I mean, it was just impossible to
Yeah.
survive in that environment. And
Hmm.
they have a bad reputation because they were basically, their enemies basically attacked them even after they were dead to try to
Hmm.
create this sense that they were the worst of the worst. But the truth is, they were just another family trying to
Hmm.
cope with this impossible world that they were living in. And
Hmm.
again, I had great affection for the three lead characters, Lucrezia, Cesare,
Hmm.
and Rodrigo, and I loved writing the show. I loved the actors; they were tremendous. In fact, tonight I'm having dinner with Dean Winters and Mark Ryder, who played Cesare Borgia. So it'll be
Uh-huh.
Mayhem versus Cesare tonight at dinner. I'm going to hide all the knives and forks, so at least I'll be able to get out of there alive.
No, it's true. What you say about this time period, it was like us in a way. It
Yes.
was impossible period of time. I mean, and I remember reading Machiavello saying that we need a prince to unify Italy, right?
Right.
And it, in theory, the Borgia Rodrigo was going to be that prince, but well, then it wasn't because of fate, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
And again, we have another, tragedy, right? And in
Mhm.
a way, you thinking like that, or it was unconscious the way you
No,
wrote
I
it?
think. Well, I mean, the difference between writing Oz and writing Borgia was I knew how Borgia ended because I knew the
Mm.
history.
Yeah.
And what I tried to imply at the ending was Rodrigo's ending was terrible. And again, it was
Mm.
all based on historical research.
Yeah.
With Lucrezia's, it was more hopeful because she actually was with the man she loved and had brought her children all together to live together.
Mm.
And with Cesare, I made up an ending for him because the there is no definitive version of what happened to Cesare when he
Mm.
was in Spain. So so I was able to play around with that a little more, and have some fun with that.
Mm.
Oh, I see Paloma's on the watching. Paloma Bloyd, is a wonderful actress who played the great love of Cesare's life. I
Oh yes.
just saw her name come up.
No. Oh well, that's great. And I was wondering, it would be possible to talk to the the actors of Borgia and us to do these lives, or they are too busy?
Oh, I'm sure they would. I'm sure they would.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I listen. I'll have Sam. You should talk to Sam. My assistant is Sam. We keep conjuring Sam's name. Nobody knows who he is. Anyway, he's my brilliant assistant who keeps me focused. Um, he can talk to Mark is here now in New York because he's doing a part on City on a Hill. So he's here, and Dean lives here, so he's here. So I'm sure they both do it. The only thing you have to ask them is, first question has to be for each is Tom Fontana the greatest human being on the planet? If they say yes, then you can continue the conversation. If they say no, excellent, then I want you to unplug them. All right?
I will.
All right.
And well, a question a lot of people ask me, director, producer here, would you, well, I asked you before, would you do a co-production with people, you know, Latin America or,
absolutely,
you know?
Absolutely. To me, it's all about character and story. If there's a great character's life to be told and a great story to be told, I'm in. I'm totally in.
Yeah, and there's a question I always ask to all the people I talk to is, how would you like to be remembered?
You know, I'm not as concerned about being remembered. I think because no one is really remembered unless you're incredibly famous. No one is really remembered past 2 or 3 generations, you know. I remember my grandparents, but I don't really remember my great-grandparents. So I'm not so concerned about being remembered. And even in terms of the television shows, you know, the way the technology is going, it's probably in a very short amount of time, the Oz and Borgia will look like silent movies, you know, flickery, you know, they'll look so sort of, because things will be 3-dimensional or whatever it'll be, you know, entertainment will be at that point. So my attitude is throw it all in the garbage can and create something new and let the next generation and the generation after that be remembered for what they do. I'm just happy to quietly go away when my time comes.
Well, you never know. I mean, probably Shakespeare didn't know he was going to be remembered as, you know.
This is true. This is true. And there are people who think he didn't exist, which is also a whole other craziness. But it's yeah. I've lived. Listen, I've been very blessed in my life. I have a beautiful family. I have beautiful friends. I've been able to do the work I love. So you know, you can push the delete button when the time comes, and I won't have a problem with that.
Well, Tom, thank you very much for this wonderful conversation, as we call it, drinking mate and talking about, you know, art, storytelling. Yeah, because I know the mate tradition in Argentina, we get together and we drink mate and eat sweet things called alfajores. I will try to send it because I've been trying to send these things to the US, but because of the quarantine I couldn't. But now the economy is returning to normal, so I will try to send you the mate and the alfajores. That's a very Argentinian thing. I'm sure you like it. As a New Yorker, I think they love this Argentinian. Like,
that sounds
so well.
Sounds excellent. All right. Well, God bless. And thank you,
bless.
everybody, for watching. Or whatever we're doing. I'm so confused by the technology, but I'm thrilled people came by and to hang out for a minute. So.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Let's see you. Bye bye.
Bye.